All in Sports Network. We love sports.
It is Saturday, March 15th, right here on your Daily Fix for all things Texas Longhorns on All In Horns, brought to you by Rogue Sports Network. I'm Tanner Carlson. That is Jake Jimerson. And the SEC tourney run for the Texas Longhorns is over. They lose to Tennessee 83-72. It felt like Tennessee had the game in hand. They looked fresher, which to be expected. Texas' third game in as many days. Tennessee's first appearance in the SEC tournament this year was on Friday, and we are recording this as our immediate reaction as soon as it possibly can be on Friday. This will release on Saturday. I also, just real quickly, before we get too far into the game, Texas baseball is also is leading at the moment over Mississippi State. Don't know exactly how that game is going to end at the time of recording, but they are up in the seventh inning. Jake, what was it, 8-5? Is that correct? Is that what I last saw?
Yeah, it's top of the eighth right now. Texas has 1 on, 2 outs, and it's 8-5. So they're 6 outs away from their first SEC victory.
Right on. And so SEC opening weekend. So should be a fun weekend if you are an SEC baseball fan or just a Texas Longhorn fan looking forward to SEC play as much as Jake and I are. And so just because the Texas Longhorns basketball team did not beat Tennessee does not mean that their season is necessarily over. Jake, are they dancing? Does their season continue?
I feel like they're more than likely in Dayton. I mean, they're either in Dayton or they're not in.
Do you count that as qualifying for the tournament, by the way?
Qualifying for the tournament? I mean, yeah. I mean, you're playing. Because I don't feel they would accept an NIT invite. So I feel like your season's either over or it's continuing because you made the tournament. And at this point, that has been integrated enough into the tournament for long enough where, I mean, I watched all those games. But if you lose in it, does it feel like you made it? Not necessarily.
Right. I think that's kind of where I'm at.
So initially it feels like you make it, but if you lose it, then it doesn't really feel like you made it.
You feel like you only made the tournament if you win that play-in game.
Yeah. I'll feel like they'll made it because their name will get announced on Selection Sunday. But then if they lose that game, I won't feel like they made it.
Yeah, we didn't even. Yeah, it's kind of like making a wild card playoff game. Then you lose the wild card game, and you're like, okay, my team didn't do anything in the playoffs. It's like we didn't even make the playoffs. Is kind of what it feels like. So, but anyway, I do think, Jake, I think that they will be one of the last teams in. I really do. Considering OU lost, considering Xavier, and Xavier might be one of the last 4 teams in as well, and that might be exactly who Texas plays in Dayton, actually. So, but with the teams on the outside looking in, all losing fairly early in their conference tournaments, whether that be a Wake Forest or what have you, I think it sets up Texas fairly nicely to have that Texas A&M win under their belt in the SEC tournament. I think that game is what's going to elevate them in. Even if it is in a play-in Dayton game against a Xavier team fighting for the 12th seed or whatever seed it might be.
Yeah, and whether Texas fans like it, whether we like it, because we've talked about how their record just doesn't, and their non-conference was weak, which they need to schedule tougher non-conferences, by the way. That's a discussion for a later time, but that would make this a lot easier process. But they do have a pretty strong resume as far as how tournament resumes are decided, as far as how the committee actually looks at things. They do have a very strong resume because of the amount of quad 1 wins they have, because their quad 1 record really isn't that bad, because they have a large amount of top 25 wins, more than a lot of teams that have way more wins than they do on the season. If you just stack their resume up against other teams, it is stronger when you look at the identifiers that the actual committee looks at.
And Joe Lunardi has, 14 SEC teams currently slated to make the tournament, which would beat the previous record of 11, which was the Big East, I think, back in like 2011, something along those lines. So regardless, there's going to be a record for the amount of SEC teams making it because he's not going to be 3 teams off from what the actual selection is going to be. Now, Joe Lunardi does not choose the bracket. However, he does have
if he did, it'd make it a lot easier.
The most reliable bracketology you can have.
Yeah, I mean, if he did, people give him crap because he was off on a few picks the other year, and it's like he was still mostly right as
Right,
far
yeah.
as like teams in. I
Whatever
mean,
his
yeah,
algorithm is that he puts in it's pretty close
and
to
also typically his picks are better than the committee's picks, if anything.
right. Yeah,
But I mean, if he made the selections, it'd be a lot easier because we'd know Texas is in.
true.
But I would be surprised if they weren't in. If they just got the doors blown off them today against Tennessee, maybe.
Agreed.
But they managed to keep it competitive despite. I mean, the clear issue in this game, to me, just to go and jump into it, was they were out of gas. I mean, just clearly they had guys getting hurt. They fought as the defense was sloppy. The feet weren't moving. They were struggling on the boards compared to the previous games. And it's understandable. I mean, they just played two very physical ball games, and then a game against A&M that was very physical and went to double overtime. They got into foul trouble. They had guys get banged up, and they fought and stayed in it the first half, despite feeling like they maybe should have been down more. If you actually looked at the stat sheet and just looked at the score, they stayed in it. But then in the second half, the wheels just started to kind of come off, and then they still kind of fought back. They could just never make one big run to try
Tennessee was in
to
control
win
of
it.
the game, and I think that's okay to say. With as fresh as that team was, as good as that team is, they're a top 4 team in the best conference in basketball. And yeah, they play a very physical brand of basketball. They're the best defensive team in the country. They're the best rebounding team in the country, and that couldn't have been a worse matchup for Texas after the previous matchups Texas had to go through to get to this point in the season. It was just a recipe for disaster, and Texas really they held their own, and that's what I was mentioning in yesterday's episode. If you haven't watched it, go back and listen to it. But what I was kind of saying when Jake and I were doing our predictions for this game, or kind of a preview of this Texas Tennessee game last night, was really what we want to see out of this Texas team is more of just fight, grit, season on the line. You may not win this game, but you can't go out there just lay an egg and look like you don't belong. And so I think they did exactly that, because I don't think a lot of people had expected Texas to even get to this point, nonetheless win this game. And so the way the SEC tournament set up with top 4 teams getting basically 2 bye weeks and getting the automatic bid to the quarterfinal round, it sets up for them to have success, and that's why you need to win your regular. That's why they make the regular season matter. So you win more games in the regular season, maybe you don't have this issue. But I even noticed, Jake, that some of the minutes and the rotations were different in this game. I know that the matchup's a little bit different, but Trey Johnson sat for longer minutes. Tremont Mark, kind of dealing with a back injury, I think back spasms very early in the game, sat more often in this game than maybe he would had otherwise. There was other guys that just made a longer rotate. Jason Kent shouldn't have ever really been in the game, but he had to play big minutes just because legs, fatigue.
He had a
bad game.
rough game.
Bad game.
Rough
Bad
game.
Yeah. And so it's one of those things where I think it was a little bit of Coach Rodney Terry saying, I'm going to bank on us making the tournament. Let's rest our guys, make sure we're not completely destroyed by the time. Not to say that he was like resting guys, but I think the minutes in the rotation was, let's not strain anybody to the point to where they're going to get hurt.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even say it was a bank on we're in the tournament. It was just out of pure actual necessity.
Sure.
Because I mean, Mark got banged up, Weaver got banged up, like where they were on the court, got hurt, and you don't want dudes to start getting hurt just because. I mean, if that A&M game ended in regulation and Texas won, they would have probably been off a lot better today, I think. But that going into double overtime, and having to play the minutes that they did, and just the physical style of basketball that is the SEC this year, they just didn't have any gas left. And it was really the start coming out of the locker room, and legs were probably a little tight from being in the locker room. And the start of that second half, that was when Tennessee pushed it out to about a 12-point lead. And then it was between as high as 14, as low as like 7 from that point on, just stayed between that range the whole game.
Yep.
And it was
that's
just
what-
that first stretch out of the second half. And it goes to show you they kept fighting. They didn't give up after they went down.
Yeah.
They kept fighting. They did not have the energy left to make that last push. And Tennessee's a really good team.
That's also a testament to Tennessee playing tournament basketball. They knew they had a game after this. They know that they want to win an SEC tournament. You know, they want to try to bump up.
They can still help their seeding a lot.
100% they can. And so they know they don't need to go all out against a team that has played the amount of basketball that Texas has played in terms of just effort and grit and grind. They kept it to within that 7-8 point lead. They kept it comfortable. They didn't overly exert themselves. They're playing tournament style basketball. And I respect Tennessee for doing that. They had a great game plan. Coach Rick Barnes did a great job on Trey Johnson and kind of negating his game and frustrating him defensively with the talent that they have on the defensive side of the ball for Tennessee. Trey Johnson showed early frustrations. I think that carried over into the second half a lot. Tremont Mark, kind of a similar situation. I think his frustration more so because he was probably ailing and just physically unable to do what he wanted to do. But yeah, Tennessee's a frustrating team because they play so physical and they rebound the ball so well, and they can make you pay with turnovers and the pressure that they apply defensively. They're just a very frustrating team to play against, and they were face guarding Trey Johnson. They were just doing an excellent job of kind of taking him out of the game, not only from a scoring standpoint, but also mentally checking him out as well.
Yeah, they had a good game plan for knowing that they were playing a team coming off 2 games. And
100%.
it was a great game plan for that.
Yeah.
And that that's a lot of credit that should go to Rick Barnes and that team. But I'm pleased with the run Texas had in the tournament. I didn't expect them to win today. It just seems so unlikely.
Yeah.
You got Tennessee going off 2 byes, who's a physical, defensive, rebounding team, and you got Texas coming off of 2 games and a double overtime game against A&M that was very physical, fighting for rebounds, style of game. It didn't feel like a game that they were going to win beforehand. And they honestly played a little bit better than I expected to. Tennessee was just hitting shots.
And we haven't even mentioned the guy's name yet. I mean, first half, he had 19 points in the first half.
Yeah. The biggest disappointment was at times just losing your man in defense from off the ball movement, off the ball screens.
Tennessee had much easier shots that they were making offensively. They had to work a lot less offensively to get the shots that they were getting, and Texas had to work twice as hard to get way more difficult shots that they were actually hitting and making in the first half, which is what kept the game as close as it was in that first half of play. But as the second half went on, there was no way that style of basketball was going to keep you into the game, because Tennessee, again, getting open looks, creating open shots, getting high percentage looks with very minimal, defense to take that away from them. And then on the offensive side for Texas, on the other side, they were working as hard as they possibly could just to get, a layup over 2 defenders while getting fouled. And it was just like, how are these shots going in? Glad that they were able to knock them down. But it just was like Tennessee is working way less to get the shots that they're getting, and Texas is working way harder to just magically make the shots that they're making.
Yeah, all my frustrations from this game came from the defense, and I don't want to single out a player, but man, Kent just had such a run. He gave up so many uncontested dunks.
The game, it was just a tough.
But he gave up probably 8 to 10 points worth of just blatantly wide open layups and dunks.
Just didn't even have his
and which
man.
Is a shame, because Kent to also roll back, though, because I saw a lot of people going, get Kent out of the game. He shouldn't even be playing anyway. He did just play 2 very good games.
You're right.
And played 2 of his best games of the season against Vanderbilt and A&M. And not only that, you got to play him because they had guys in foul trouble. They had guys getting banged up, and you're playing your 3rd game in 3 days, and one that went into double overtimes in the previous game. So Texas went from out of the tournament to very likely in the tournament based off their play in the SEC tournament. And that's kind of my takeaway coming out of this. And if they play like they did in the SEC tournament, they should beat whoever they play in a first 4 game. Now, the question is, can they do that? Yeah. But I think they found something with having Mark at the point. It's helped the spacing. It's helped the ball movement. It's helped the screen. The screen and roll game has been much better. It's opened up a lot for them offensively, and I think if they can just keep that up, they're going to be able to at least win their first 4 game, and then it'll, we'll see what the matchup would look like from there. But I would favor them in a game in Dayton, and I'd be a little surprised if they aren't in the tournament and in that first 4.
I've also got Texas 8-5 going into the 9th inning.
It's in the 9th inning right now. Top of the 9th, 1 out. I got it stream open on my phone.
Cool,
If you see me looking down,
no, that's fine.
Looks like, oh, he's safe. So 1 out, 1 on for Texas in the top of the 9th, up 8-5. So
up 8-5.
Hopefully, weird game, by the way, to talk about the baseball game real quick. Poured down rain in the middle of it. Sun ended up coming out. Right as the rain was stopping in the 2nd inning, Texas hit a 2-run bomb in I think it was the first, goes up 2-0. Then Mississippi State.
I think it was top of the second.
Top of the second. And then in the bottom, thank you. In the bottom of the second, Mississippi State comes out and quickly gets a solo shot, quickly gets 2 on base, then hits a home run.
Yeah.
And just 4-2, and the 2 lead was gone before you blinked. Then scoring kind of stalled out from there. And it was 5-2 Mississippi State. And then Texas went on a big run in, I think it was like the 6th or 7th inning where they went on a big run. It was the 7th inning. They had a 5-run 7th, where was 0, and all that scoring was pretty much with 0 outs. They had hit by pitch, single home run, if I recall correctly, to end up taking that lead. So been a pretty exciting opening SEC game. I know Mississippi State's not ranked, but they are a pretty good team this year.
They're a solid team.
Very arguably could be ranked in the top 25, and they're right on that borderline.
Yeah. But a good team and a good program that they have at Mississippi State, a couple years removed from a national championship appearance or a national championship.
No, they won. They won. That year they beat Texas in the they ended up they did end up winning the World Series.
They played Ole Miss that year, correct?
Ole Miss won it the next year. Ole Miss wasn't in it that year. I can't remember who they played. It might have been Vanderbilt.
Vandy.
Yeah, and then Ole Miss won the next year.
I know the SEC has had a run of like the last 5 national champions, and I get confused of which order that happened in. So, but Jake, without burying the lead, and as we await this Texas-Mississippi State game to go final, now we may not be on air recording this episode while they go final. However, we kind of buried the lead a little bit. I want to backtrack. Texas golfer Luke Potter got in a little bit of hot water. And I feel like as a podcast, as a Texas Longhorn podcast, we'd be doing ourselves a disservice if we didn't bring this up and kind of defend our guy. Rory McIlroy, kind of a bitch move, don't you think? I mean, that was kind of so for those, let's back up. For those who don't know the story, apparently Luke Potter was watching a practice round. It was like a Wednesday afternoon before the start of the players. And he shouts out to Rory after Rory put one in the water. Again, a practice round. He's probably trying new things. He's probably not playing that way in the tournament. But Potter shouts out, reminds you of the 2011 Masters, no? Something along those lines. And Rory comes to Potter, takes his phone, theft, midday stealing, takes his property away from him, and walks off. Potter then has to write a written apology, and McIlroy is still yet to comment on the situation. I'm on Team Potter.
Did he get the phone back? How did that? I haven't heard how that worked out.
That is something, again, McIlroy has yet to comment on the situation. Again, he's kind of running away from the problem here. But you got to be a little mentally tougher than that, don't you think? If you're Rory McIlroy?
Yeah, this is one where, I mean, I'll be on Team Potter, but at the same time, I don't know.
No, we have to disavow McIlroy on this one.
Oh, I'm disavowing McIlroy completely. I don't think heckling a player like that makes you cool, though. I will just say, like, I don't know. I've never, but at the same time, as a pro athlete, it is your job to ignore that crap or heckle back. But to go take the phone so you can delete a video or whatever he did with it, it is one of the biggest loser moves I've ever seen. In no way, shape, or form am I defending McIlroy or saying that he is not more in the wrong here.
And Luke Potter did not have to have a written apology.
It was a very Aggie move by Rory McIlroy. By the way, Aggies, post the final score, you
Cowards.
sleeping cowards.
Cowards. Post
I don't think
the
we've
final.
had F-bombs dropped on the show yet, so I try to avoid that, but I want to drop one there.
I've
Post
dropped
the
one, I think.
score.
Yeah, I think I've
Post
dropped
the
one.
score, you absolute cowards.
You cowards.
Oh, and if you're a Texas fan, go request a community note. I have done that. We need a community note on that. People need to own up to their L's. I know A&M takes a lot of them, but you still got to post it.
You'd think they'd be used to it by now. But yeah, so I didn't want to bury the lead. Forgot to mention that. But yeah, I don't think he should have written a written apology.
No, the only reason he was doing that is probably try to avoid getting trouble like at school.
Sure.
Try to avoid any type of, but it's not a suspension worthy. It's not getting in trouble at school or with the Texas golf team worthy. Probably not the smartest thing to do if you're playing at Texas golf, which is pretty prestigious.
So what's funny about this whole story is I heard about this story. I knew this had happened. I wasn't going to bring it up. It wasn't worth us bringing it up, but I didn't know it was a Texas Longhorn golfer.
No, I didn't realize that until you had texted me today, and I was like, "Oh."
Part. That's the funniest part about this whole thing was the fact that it was a Texas Longhorn golfer that got in the middle of all this. And I was like, I knew the story had come out. And again, even before I knew it was a Texas Longhorn, I was like, McElroy, really, dude? That's kind of soft. That's a really mentally weak move that you made there. He is what, Northern Ireland, something like that. So it kind of makes sense. He's European. He's got a very fragile mindset.
Yeah.
And
that's why we separated from them.
Yeah. And so, but as a pure blood American who can, stand up for himself willingly and freely. I'm team Potter all day long, hook 'em horns. And he shouldn't have had to write a formal apology. But I also want McElroy to at least face the music and answer some questions to the media about the situation and maybe clear some of the air.
Yeah, I don't understand how he's avoided any consequences from this.
There's also like press charges because you stole my property, possibly. Like you took it right out of my Jake. If I walked up to you on the
street,
from
a legal standpoint, he said, "Can I see your phone?" And I think Roy knew what he was doing. He goes up to him and says, "Can I see your phone?" And then he just walks off with it.
But he just took it.
But he had to get it back. If he didn't get it back, I feel like we would know that.
Yeah. But I also am like, okay, if I walk up to somebody on the street and I say, "Hey, can I see your phone?" and then I just take it from them and don't give it back to them, that's called theft. That is against the law.
Yeah, I don't understand how when I saw that happen, I was like, "Is he?" And then he's just like, "Yeah, I'm not commenting on that." And it's like
wild.
How can they not? The PGA Tour, something investigate that to a point and just be like, we're going to get the whole story out there because this looks terrible.
Yeah, it's a bad look. It's a really bad look. But Jake, anyway, hey, Texas may or may not go dancing. I feel like they are. I feel like they will be one of the first 4 teams in. I feel like they will be playing in Dayton as a play-in game, probably against Xavier. At least that's what all signs are pointing to. That's kind of what I'm banking on. Don't know if it's for a 10 seed, 12 seed, what that's going to look like. That remains to be seen, but definitely looking forward to the possibility of Texas playing, come March Madness on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, possibly. So at least a Thursday, Friday is what I'm hoping for. And so, because it, like you said, Jake, it's so much more fun whenever I've got a rooting interest in my own personal team in March Madness. We've had to go a couple of years with Texas not appearing in it. Those years are just not as fun. They're just not as fun.
No, I mean, we went up forever without them winning a single game.
Right.
In the tournament. So, yeah, I mean, I hope they're in it. I think they will be in it in Dayton. Obviously, we'll be covering that Sunday. We'll be covering the 1 out, bottom of the 9th. We'll be covering this baseball series. Whoever ends up winning the series, hopefully they're able to get it all in. I know they're getting a lot of bad weather there. That's why this game's being played earlier on Friday, is to avoid some of the weather they're having coming in this evening, even like high probability of tornadoes and stuff. But yeah, it should be an exciting weekend for Texas athletics with baseball going on.
Softball.
We have softball going on.
And then we also have women's national tournament, March Madness, women's March Madness. getting underway here shortly. So we need
Their
to
selection Sunday's the same day, isn't it?
I maybe not sure. I feel like they start a week ahead of us, of the men.
I mean, they haven't done the.
Well, I know they haven't started actual March. The bracket has not been released yet.
Which, by the way, Texas in the most recent women's is still a 1 seed.
It's still a 1 seed.
As kind of what I would expect, even though the AP put them at 5.
But let's go ahead and wrap up the show. And again, for everybody who is curious, on Sunday we will record an episode and release it Monday. We typically do not release episodes on Monday, but we are going to start a new schedule Monday through Friday for the baseball season, and as well as through March Madness as well. But the purpose of it is so we're kind of more up to date on the happenings through the weekend. And so we will have a live bracket release following Selection Sunday for the March Madness bracket. And we will fill out our brackets and go over the bracket for that episode on Sunday going into Monday. Jake, you got something to say?
Men's bracket will be unveiled starting at 6 p.m. Eastern time, so 5 p.m. Central time on Sunday. Women's bracket, 8 p.m. Eastern time, 7 p.m. Central time.
So right after.
On Sunday. So that will be the reveals,
Maybe.
and then we'll know the fates of Texas on both sides.
I have a feeling Jake and I are going to want to have to talk about the men's bracket for too long while also filling out our bracket on that episode to do a women's bracket as well. But we will fill out a women's bracket, and we will also discuss what's happening.
We may have to do just a initial talk on Sunday, and then Monday record another episode after we've had time for Tuesday, where we actually fill it out. I need time to actually put thought into my bracket, not fair. Have it all done Sunday night.
Yeah, that's fair. I need to do some homework. Although I feel like I'm an official ball knower, but still need to do some homework on the some of the smaller double digits.
You are a ball knower, just not so much on the sports end.
With that episode in the books, for Jake Jimerson, I'm Tanner Carlson. Knocked it out of the park. It's gone. This has been your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns right here on All In Horns, brought to you by Rogue Sports Network. That's Jake Jimerson. I'm Tanner Carlson, official ball knower. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, welcome.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.